Exactly 10 o'clock. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to 99th episode of Tech Forum. This month we will be completing 100 episodes, and 100th episode will be offline. We will be hiring some hall and inviting all our members, and we'll be celebrating 100th episode. The same day, we will be launching our website, which is almost ready. Thanks to Anil for taking efforts. Friends, today's speaker is Abhijit Pimpley, and he is a director at Vishay Technology, especially the Easter division. Mr. Surendra Agarwal, I will request him to introduce Abhijit because this is a tech forum's very fast growing group, medical devices, where under the leadership of engineer Surendra Agarwal, this group was formed sometime on 6th November, and later we have made at least 5 episodes of lecture series on medical devices, and now it is taking shape. Mr. Agarwal will brief you about the activities of this group, but it is really going to support medical devices industry. So, without spending much time, I will request Mr. Surendra Agarwal, Engineer Surendra Agarwal, to introduce Abhijit and the topic. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vilas, for the nice introduction. uh, Today, I got the privilege of introducing Abhijit Pimpley, who is the main force behind our vision of setting up a medical device park. Let me start with the objective of medical device group. Basically, it is to help the existing and budding entrepreneurs in the $45 billion industry of medical devices. And how we are going to do it? One is that we'll be mentoring the budding and incoming entrepreneurs by helping them in their product strategy, financial strategy, marketing strategy, etc., etc. And also having a common infrastructure facilities by setting up common infrastructure facilities, which is known as medical device park, and it contains, you know, many common facilities which can help the budding entrepreneurs in the medical devices to reduce their cost and also the time to launch the product. And some of the things are in the medical device park is, common facilities are like prototyping, common testing, 3D design, etc., etc. About 14 are listed in the medical device park uh, thing, which is announced by the government of India. So Abhijit Pimple has been the main force behind the conceptualization and also making a lot of efforts in terms of contacting other medical device park people and taking it forward. So it's my pleasure to introduce him today. Abhijit is an instrumentation engineer of 1995 batch, and he has also done executive development general management program at IIM Lucknow. He has attended many management development programs like Global Manager Program at NUS Singapore, Stanford. Basically, his domain is power electronics and component design. He has also designed the component for one of our entrepreneurs, Geotronics. Also, he is an expert in business strategies and business model. He has got uh, 10 years experience in research and development. He has 8 years in the operations and marketing leadership, about 14 years. Most of these things overlap each other. His work history is he has worked with Compton Cruise Business Communication Division, Siemens, Matsushita, Epoch Spain, and now working as Director of Operations and Marketing at Vishay Components. He also had an experience of partnering a startup, which he later on sold out. So I'm very happy now to request Abhijit to start his presentation. Thank you. Thank you, friends.
So, good morning to you all. Good morning, Agarwal ji, for a very flowery introduction. I, I hope I live up to the expectations that you have created. Uh, this topic, as Agarwal sir mentioned, we started about uh, 3, 4 months ago. We had several groups in this medical group within the Tech Forum, but this particular one is to try to create the ecosystem for medical devices, medical equipments to flourish in the state of Maharashtra. So that is the objective. So what I will do is I will share with you some insights, some learnings that we have for the last 3, 4 months, and I will also then discuss some opportunities that we can create for this ecosystem. So please allow me to share my screen. Uh, Please let me know when you are seeing my screen already.
Yes, please continue.
Okay, this topic is a non-technical topic actually. So, and it is a very wide area. So there are lots of possibilities when we are talking to people and how to go about it. So let me start my presentation by going back to Alice in Wonderland. Uh, I like this page very much. So it is a dialogue between the Cheshire cat, which is on the top, and Alice is standing at the bottom. So the Alice asks, Cat, would you tell me please which way I ought to go from here? And the cat replies, that depends a good deal where you want to go. So I think this is the whole essence. So right now, the whole infrastructure, the ecosystem is so fluid. So we need to set the boundaries, we need to set the direction of where we should go. And so what I have done is I have broken down my talk into two parts. First is the landscape of where we are, and then we talk about the map where we want to go. Okay, so I will be talking about the global business environment, global medical equipment business, the Indian medical equipment business, about the aspirations of India and the government, what it is doing, what kind of policy supports we have, and then we talk in detail about the elements of this ecosystem. I will also touch upon, in fact I will add a lot to the common facilities that Sundarji just mentioned, so we can bring a lot of things together. What are the challenges? The last point I wanted to talk, but I will not include today because this, it seems, becomes a completely new 1 hour session. So I will not be talking about entrepreneurship, but up to the challenges I will cover today. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask whenever you want. Okay, let us start by looking where we are right now. So on the left, uh, just let me see if I my pointer. Okay, so on the left here, we are talking about 115 trillion world economy that it is right now, and we are very happy that we are world's fifth largest at 4.3 trillion. So it's a really significant, very large achievement for us where we are. However, things are not so good actually if you look on the graph on the right side. So our per capita income is only about $2,500, which is far away from $50,000, which is in Germany or some other countries. So even if our economy is going very well, we are we're very far away from where we should be in the future. And what this brings me to the graphic on the bottom, and I found this very interesting to set the context, that it says that between 2012 and 2030, in the 18 years, we will lose about 3.55 trillion on chronic diseases. This is almost as good as 1 year's GDP for India. It is a very significant amount. So, the topic of health, medical equipment, preventive medicine, this becomes extremely important for our nation. So from here, let us go and have a look on the medical business equipment globally. So both these graphics are exactly the same. So they gave the same information from two different sources. We are looking at in 2030 for about $795 billion. One billion is 8,500 crores. So that's the context. What is interesting is we have a CAGR of 5.2 and a CAGR of 8.3. So between 5 and 8, that's the anticipated growth for us in the next 5 to 10 years. And this is, I will also touch upon the Indian scenario where I will explain the Indian growth rate. But which means we are looking at a level of 1 trillion, 1.1 trillion by the next 10 years, by 2035. So it's a significantly large market for us. If you look at this forecast that we have here, so US, China, France, Japan, India, Germany, UK are the top seven markets by revenues. And on the right side, if you see, we have 43% share of this market from US, 32 from the Europe. So the Western dominance of this market is about 20%, 80%. So the West is controlling about 80% of this market. Also interesting to note here is the GDP spend on healthcare, which is about 3.3% in South Asia. So I would assume South Asia is mostly India because Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, so they may not be contributing so much. But I believe this is all coming from India, which is very, very low compared to 16.6 or 10, which is in Europe. That's the government is spending on the healthcare sector. So, what I'm trying to say here is that there's a significant gap in where we should be and where we are at the moment. Okay, let me go ahead. This is now the split up of the Indian import and export in last year. As Agarwalji mentioned, the market is about 40 billion, between 40 and 50 billion dollars in India. So it's a significantly large market. And you will see most of it is electronic equipment. Some part 26% is disposable, some IVD devices, some implants and surgical. But by and large, almost 60% of it is electronics equipment. There is also a breakup of this available. So if you look on the graphic on the left, so about $12 billion out of 40 exchanged the ports. So the rest of it, 28 billion was for India, but 12 billion exchanged ports, out of which 8.2 billion dollars was import and 3.8 billion dollars was export. And if you see almost everything, so we imported 18% from US, 17% from China, from Germany, Singapore, and Netherlands. And we also exported to almost the same countries. Yeah. But I want to bring your attention to this table on the right. So if you see, our exports mostly have been disposable and consumables. So it is the lower end of the product spectrum, the lower technology part, where we have been exporting. If you look on the electronic equipment, we have imported about 64%, but we have exported only 38%. So our business right now in medical equipments is mostly on disposables and consumables right now, and I think this needs to change very quickly. I will also show you in some moments what the Indian government is aspiring to be, so that will set up the context for the future. Okay, so the aspiration for India right now is to reach a short-term goal is to reach to $50 billion by 2030, and by 2047 to reach $250 billion dollars. So that is the forecast. Now, uh, this 250,000 translates into about 21 lakh crore rupees in rupee terms. And this would also translate to about 25% of the global market. So if the global market is going to be about 1.1 trillion dollar, so 250 billion would about 25% of that market. So the aspiration is huge. It is massive, and we are seeing a completely different way, a different approach on how these markets are going to develop in the next few years. So the drivers that have been identified are basically three drivers. It's the changing disease patterns and healthcare and delivery trends, the demographics, and the evolution of this medical technology industry and this ecosystem. So these three basic themes have been driving the market uh, and the growth of the market. So, for example, here we are talking about uh, rising chronic diseases, focus on preventive care. The average age, which is 74 right now, is expected to be about 80 in the next 5 6 years. So the elderly population will also be growing. So a lot of these things are really driving up the medtech market. And because of this, the expectation is that we will grow to about $250 billion by 2047. So it's a very, very ambitious target. And I think this presents a lot of opportunities for us to, to harness and to ride this wave, if I say, to ride this wave so that we can reach this peak. Going ahead, there are several others, but most importantly is this one is India's inherent digital technology strength. And I think this is something we should really capitalize. And I will talk much about this also later on in the later slides. This is something we really need to harness properly and channelize it so that we can really establish our leadership also in this domain. Okay, let us talk about some of the policy support that the government has been offering. And a lot of things happened through 2014 to now. Let's say through FDI routes, medical rules were changed. But I think 2020 was one of the inflection points, I would say, in this Indian medical industry scenario. So the PLI scheme, this has been the cornerstone uh, uh, of this medical devices and medical equipment business evolution in India. Also in 2020, during the COVID period, the government realized that we are extremely reliant on even the smaller things, even the masks, even the PPEs, even those things we were completely import reliant. We did not have this. So exactly during this period between June July, they made this medical devices park scheme. So this Spark schemes allowed immediately people to start investing into this, and they also published this public procurement preference to make in India order, which means if your local content was higher than 50-60% to get preference in this government bidding. So these two orders happened in 2020. Then some new changes 2023, and then this one was of extremely important strategic direction in 2023, which was a national medical devices policy. So a new policy was brought in for medical devices. If you need, I will have all this information available to share. Then they also brought in an R&D uh, innovation scheme for the companies, and they started this Meditech Mitra scheme for startup. So anybody who wants to start up can simply apply for funds from the government. So these two, three things immediately highlights that the government is really focused since 2023 on developing this medical devices and medical equipment infrastructure in India. So, uh, if I recollect, they want to have about 50 such clusters manufacturing medical devices into India, and we are at a minuscule 8. So we are really really far behind of what they want to achieve, in this aspect. Okay, then there were some other things which were general. So one was a Meditech Stackathon which happened in 2024. This was allowing people to address these questions of cancers and other allied diseases. So this happened last year somewhere in September October. So this is just to give you an idea of what efforts the government is trying to take to build this infrastructure. I want to also share some information. Uh, so about 1.8 billion, so 588 crores were added by the PLI scheme. So after the PLI scheme was launched in 2020, the addition already has started. So a lot of things have started to happen. The pace is slow, but it has started to happen. So PLI has been the cornerstone of the medical equipment manufacturing for India so far. Uh, this is just a summary and also sets the basis for today's talk. So after this medical equipment park policy was announced, we had several parks uh, in operation. So the oldest one is Andhra MedTech Zone (AMTZ). This was in 2016. It was before this policy. Then we have a Telangana, which is 2017. This report, by the way, is from November 2024. So it's the latest one. But as you can see, we have Himachal, Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Madhya Pradesh, Kerala, Gujarat, and Haryana. All are under development. But the worst part is there is no Maharashtra. So I think Maharashtra has missed the bus. So Maharashtra did actually apply for 2022 for this Auric zone in Aurangabad, but we did not get this. Our proposal was not accepted by the government, by the central government. What we now have is a medical bulk medicine park in Dighi, but it is not equipments. So that's the only thing that we have got from this right now. So I think Maharashtra needs to step up its game, and I think what we are trying to do here is trying to throw in some ideas on how it should be done or how it could be done. Whether it comes from the government or it's a non-governmental, we will see in some time. But I think we have an immense opportunity here to try to do something significant for the country. Before I go into the Indian aspect or the park arts aspect of it, just two slides I want to share uh, to just to set the mood of what really is happening in this. Two big trends that are happening in the Indian scene. One, as I mentioned in the past, the CAGR for the globe was about between 8 to 5%. The Indian medical industry has a CAGR of about 20%. So it is almost 50% or almost double or more than double of the worldwide CAGR. It's a tremendous opportunity for us right now. Also, left side you see that the pharma industry is only growing at about 12.3. So what this does is all these big pharma companies, Dr. Reddy's, Cipla, Lupin, Alchem, all these are moving towards the medical technology zone. And I think it's a good thing, which we'll also discuss later on. While big pharma companies are moving, and they are actually working on, they're trying to leverage the digital innovation and cost competitiveness as the core, and they are trying to even export from here, expanding globally. They are entering into some price sensitive segments where they can, with the Indian manpower, they can penetrate. So they're doing this kind of job, and they're also trying to enter into markets where we are import reliant. So all these three, four things are the areas where the pharma companies are already actually trying to enter into the Indian market. Uh, So this is already happening. These are some trends. Actually, to be very honest, I do not understand all of these that is listed here, but I found most of these are really advanced technology. For example, uh, nano diamond based drug delivery devices. So in the next 15 years, they expect some very specific devices, biohybrid kidneys. So all these things, I thought I should keep it a slide here, just to show that we are not talking about hand gloves and masks and hardware for medical equipment. We are really talking about the cutting edge technology here, which is going to take shape in the future. And the second most important trend is that most of these technology will be digital driven. So whether it is prevention, whether it is monitoring after post treatment, whether it is on call diagnostics, at site diagnostics, data analytics. So I think the whole system is moving from the traditional in hospital settings to outside the hospital and becoming more and more digital. And I think this trend will continue in the future. And this trend, I think, is an amazingly great chance for India to take the lead into the future. So this was some information about the global and the Indian business where we are. We will now talk specifically what options are available for Maharashtra, for the industries in Maharashtra, and how we can really bring it all together. So to bring this all together, we need to be a very, very competitive nation. So I was reading through the competition in competitive index of India. India is around placed around 85 or something in the list of countries. So it is far, far away. But the whole competitive nation, I can say we can divide into three parts. One is the industry, so the medical equipment industry itself, which consists of the market demand, the tax structure, what kind of regulation, the IPRs, the homologation or the approvals which are necessary for this industry. The second is the ecosystem, which is the raw material, machine technology, what kind of innovation is happening in the system. And the last one is the macro environment, which is at a national level, which is ease of doing business, what kind of labor laws, cost of financing, those kind of things. So for this ecosystem, for this industry to be successful, we need to be successful and we need to manage each of these steps along the way. So even if one of these steps is missed, so it will be very difficult for us to reach this staggering figure of 250 billion that we are aspiring to be. Okay, so this is a graphic which shows about the National Medical Devices Policy 2023. I deliberately put this here because the idea is right. The idea of the government, what it wants, is to streamline the regulatory framework, enable indigenous manufacturing, facilitate R&D, create brand awareness, developing skilled workforce, attract investments. So everything that the idea is very, very sound and the direction is very, very good from the government right now. So the government from its part is making all its efforts to do this. Let us now talk about the ecosystem itself. Okay, so there are lots of elements to a medical equipment ecosystem, and we will be talking about this in great detail now from here on. So the first is the investor. So we should be able to have access to VCs, to financial institutions, through other grants, other sources of income. I think this is the starting point for this ecosystem to be there. If we are looking at 250 billion or 200 billion kind of business, if we do not have the funds, then it is not possible to even imagine to be there. So this cannot happen without funds. This is absolutely clear. The second is the government. The government has to play a very, very active role, not only frame policies or to be a passive player in this, but government must play a very, very active role into this, into the implementation of what they are promising. So we need policy support, regulation support. We also need really, really strong focus on the human resources, specifically related to this medical equipment. So this part government must play very, very positively. Then we have the product. So we have the hardware, which will include some moldings, metalwork, special processes, electronic components, and so on. Some parts of software, then homologation, so which may talk about some common testing facilities, product qualities, product approvals. Then we need to also focus on uh, innovation, which should be market research, action sociology, academic institutes. All these things should be part of that ecosystem. Then legal, which is IPR for data protection, patent protection, product conformity. So I will also be talking about it in detail right now. And then logistics. So all these 4 5 parts should be a part of an ecosystem to make it successful, really. So the first step that I think should be done is to set up an idea incubation lab. So this incubation lab can be at a cluster site or linked to a cluster site. So this can also be at a university. This can also be at CUP, for example. But it should be linked to a site and it should be linked to the industries. So it cannot work in isolation right now. I mentioned about financial support, access to VCs and other financial sources. Then we need mentors. So we need people who are familiar with this industry, who can handhold and who can grow with this business. I think here Tech Forum is doing wonderfully well. We have a really good resources, really good resource persons who can help companies to take things forward. And there should be some support for R&D expenditure. So in the policies right now, whatever government policies have done have are there, there is not so much returns on the R&D expenditure. So if we have to really look at it a very large scale, then the funnel of the R&D projects must also be significantly large. So we cannot be just copying from outside and see the growth. We have to be developing the next future technologies. So the budgets must be proportionally higher for this. So this is the first step as a part of that cluster. Then we should be having a kind of a government central facilitation center at the cluster, which must have a representation from CDSCO to coordinate everything. We must have a laboratory coordination officer because we have so many government labs from which the approvals must take place. So a common laboratory coordination officer is absolutely necessary. Then we should also have a DGFT support staff. If we have to export from here, for all the imports and exports that we need, all the regulations that we have to follow, a DGFT support staff must be at the facilitation center in the cluster. And plus, we must have a state government liaison officer who is coordinating with all the state government topics, whether it is labor, whether it is uh, pollution control, any other. I mean, whether it is Dish or whoever. So, one state government liaison officer center. So, a government facilitation center at the cluster, at the part of this ecosystem that we want to create, is an absolute must here. Moving ahead, this is one of my favorite topics, actually, human resources. By the way, if you have some questions so far, or it is okay, I am not getting any feedback. So it is too fast, it is too slow.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay. So human resources, as I mentioned, is my one of my favorite topics here. Uh, we are all always thinking about manufacturing and turnover and things like this, but I think we must really be also focusing on the core technology, and therefore Medipark cannot exist without biological sciences. So whether it is biophysics, biochemistry, microbiology, even even pharmacy or pharmacology, so all those basic sciences must be a part of this core technology. I think most of these innovations which will happen in these areas with material scientists, with physicists, chemists. So they will bring about these barriers uh, for others to copy. So the finer nuances in the products are created here at this core technology. Then we need to have engineering, of course, electronics, metallurgy, manufacturing technology, whether it is molding, stamping, toolings, and also the knowledge to build these machines. So with special purpose machines, with with automation, robotics. So these kind of engineering stuff will also need to be built. I also included here sociology and psychology and market research. And the reason I did this is the identification of the problem, or identification of, or the framing of the problem statement happens in this area. So to identify, so most of the products of the future, if they are going to be of digital in nature or of services in nature also, so a market research and ability to identify the problems that people are facing, social sciences will have to play a very important part in this. And the last 3 points, trained labor, of course, some insurance stuff, and whether we can have some diluted labor laws, some labor laws like we have in SEZs. So this will allow the companies to invest. This will also allow some foreign companies to invest in India without, having this fear of the Indian bureaucracy or the Indian red tape. So I think these few things on the human resources are extremely important for us. I picked up some points from the list of 14, which I thought were very important. So, calibration facility, biocompatibility testing, prototyping, material characterization, product life cycle testing. I added a couple at the bottom. So, critical care product testing. This one is extremely important. So, if people are developing some implants and they're not allowed to test, so I think here the whole system fails. So the Indian companies will not be able to move forward in this. And also a last one is, with this cluster, it would be amazing. It will be very interesting to have an attached hospital. So all these new products that you want to do, you have the customers and you have direct customer feedback for this. So I don't think it is there right now in the policy, but if it is there for Maharashtra, if we can do that, I think it will be extremely beneficial for this. Also, while talking to several of our colleagues in this field, my conclusion was legal services and legal facility is extremely important. Probably the second most important after human resources. So it is. This is license, by the way. It's a mistake. So license required for import and sale for medical devices. There are a lot of licenses. If you have to make a notified medical device, you need both approvals at central state governments. For clinical investigation, there are different rules and regulations. For products, there are different rules and regulations and standards. For labeling, you have metrological guidelines. You have now QMS also is a part of the legal requirements. quality management system is also a part of the legal requirements now. So import restrictions. So all these, I mean, patent protection, data exclusive, trademarks, pricing of medical devices, penalties, all this, I think, uh, coming from a technical background, I think this is one of our, how can I say, a black hole probably, and where we really lack this knowledge. And having this knowledge right there in the cluster, in that facility, would be extremely, extremely important and very, very helpful. And this will take away all the stresses that people face. Even last time, I think when Ashish was presenting, he also mentioned that they are still struggling with this approval processes. So having this facility right there in this cluster would be amazingly helpful for the people. Going ahead, so common logistics, railroad infrastructure. If we are looking at export from here, then an inland port services would be very, very helpful. So if really we are looking at that scale where we want to export from here, then having an inland port right at the cluster would help the export services uh, from there. And some other facilities like common water supply, power supply, ETP common, some drainage facilities and stuff like this. So all these elements then they basically become the requirements of a cluster that we are looking for. So how it can look. So for example, here you have some companies which are the prime manufacturers of the products that we have. We could have something like a supplier park. The supplier park would consist of either molders or metal forming, ceramics, some metallurgy, some extrusion lines, and stuff like this. So all that goes into this would be manufactured here mostly. If you have to scale up to that level, then you need machines. You need special purpose machines. You need carriages. You need their service centers. You need automation. You need data acquisition. Uh, So if you look at the way US is manufacturing and the US, the way they want to manufacture in future, it will be less and less of labor and more of automation. I think if we have to compete, we have to start thinking on those lines to take it forward. So in India, sometimes we say, okay, the labor is cheap, so men can do. But when men do, men also make mistakes. The variability also increases. So I think we have to move away from this labor intensive to a more machine dominant, machine oriented manufacturing. Then we have some collaboration partners, whether it is IIT, whether it's CMET, IITs, universities, CDACs, any customer labs. So all those could be a part of this facility or this cluster. And then, as I mentioned, the other services, government services, lawyers, ETP, ESIC, warehouses, so all other services, all this together uh, should come into a cluster as a part of the cluster. So now we have also seen that there are many, many different segments. So, for example, we have electronics, we have some diagnostic products, we have implants, we have disposables. So it may not be possible for us to have a very massive, very huge cluster in one place to have all those segments together. So it could be possible that you have multiple clusters. So for example, you have one cluster which I call the innovation cluster. So where the design houses are there. Design houses are building their products, they're designing the products, uh, they're setting the specifications, and they kind of sell it out, or they sell the IP of those parts. So, for example, COEP develops, or the some engineering colleges develop a product, and they are not able to manufacture. They, through the innovation center, they could sell it to somebody, the IP to somebody who is able to manufacture. So this kind of innovation cluster is possible. We could have an electronics cluster. We could have a diagnostic cluster. There could be a connection between cluster to cluster. So they could talk on certain things which are mutually beneficial to them, where it is linked. We could even have a cluster to a non-medical cluster. So, for example, if there is a textile cluster which is making fabrics for medical, so this cluster could also talk to a disposable and consumer cluster. So within this medical group, a cluster, and or even outside. So for example, we have special metallurgy cluster, or we have a ceramic cluster someplace. So these clusters can also talk within each other to form this whole ecosystem that we are looking at. And this whole thing needs to be at a very synchronized way, very transparent synchronized way, to make the best out of this what we have. So let me go to this slide first, then I come back to the earlier slide. So our options right now, we have been talking to people since November, so it's not such a long time. We have identified four ways of doing this. The first way is, which is the easiest way, is that we have some clusters already available. Let's say, for example, we have a medical electronics cluster. So somebody can join this existing cluster. This is easy to start, very low hanging fruit. We can easily start, but the benefits would be limited. Benefits would be limited for us. And if you want to scale up, it is extremely difficult to scale up because the cluster is already defined and closed. You cannot close it up. The second which we identified is establish a private MSME cluster. So we had a presentation, I think last time, with Rahul Amrutkar, and he highlighted how it is possible to have a private cluster. So the advantage is there is no government interference; it's completely separate, but it will be a small land parcel. So it will not be very massive parcel that we want, and the common facilities would be shared by the and would have to be built by the participants. The government would not be participant to this. Third, what we have identified, and which is the most easy, not the easy, but the most proper way to do, is to liaise with the government and to build a Maharashtra Medipark. So whether it is built here in Pune or Aurangabad or wherever, that's a different question. But building and liaise with the government to build this could offer significant advantages, and it would be easy for us to scale to the level we want to go. So let's say out of 250 billion, if Maharashtra, let's say, wants 250 billion, 50 billion a very large number. So to do this in smaller sectors, on the smaller clusters, this would not be possible. So this can only be done in a very large medical park. However, to do this, where we are struggling right now is to have a critical mass. So the first question the government will ask is how many people are behind this, or what kind of business you can promise. So this is where we are stuck right now. So we need a critical mass to get a government buy-in. And the last one is talk to some pharma majors to convince them to invest. I have been talking to a few people. They have not shot me down, but it is not a very, because it is not a very specific discussion. It has been a very open discussion right now. The best part of this would be uh, the market approach and the market network would be very easily available to the entrepreneurs. So, for example, if a company is building a defibrillator in India, and if it is tying up with, let's say, Cipla, so the entire market that Cipla controls or Cipla has distribution channel, this becomes easily available. So those kind of hand holding, dealing with government topics, this would become extremely easy. However, here the downside is the financial dealings with these large pharma majors could be very tricky. So, how to share the profits, how to have that agreement in place, I think this is something that we need to work about. But on and all, this can be also another way to scale up to that level, because if you want uh, public partner, private partnership, it would not be happening with MSMEs. It would be happening with large major companies for if we have to grow. So these are four options that we have right now. The challenges that we are facing right now is that the vision of the government is not translated into action. So when we are talking about 50 clusters to be opened in across India, and we have not even only two fully functional, not even 10 fully functional, we are far away from what the government intends and what is actually happening on the field. The second is the change in the mindset. We are still talking about vocal for local. I think this is not enough right now. We have to think really big. If we have to reach 250 billion, we have to be thinking about 250 billion. By making small adjustments and cutting corners, I think this would not happen. So if a new plant is being set up, the plant must be set up for the world, for that level, for that manufacturing capability. It cannot be done only for some smaller, local consumption. This would not be possible. The third point here is that we cannot work in isolation. So, a medical equipment park must also work with electronics park, for example. So, the medical equipment park comes under the Ministry of Pharmaceutical Development, but the electronics is under Ministry of Electronics. So when the two ministries are different, we must have a way to coordinate better between these two. Or, as said, medical park with ceramics for implants, dental implants, with metallurgy for steel implants, with textiles, for new kinds of developments. So all these things should work together. Fourth point, as I mentioned, in also in the past, that uh, we must leverage our knowledge of the digital systems. I think this is a significant advantage, uh, and we must take full benefit out of this. Uh, and lastly, as I mentioned, big pharma majors could lead the way if we have to reach that level, if the government is not stepping in. Also, we have to kind of piggyback large companies to make it happen. And this is my last slide after having spoken so much. This is about the Medical Device Innovation Index from KPMG. This was published in 2023, so it's about 2 years old. So I want to just mention here that while US is at 74.4, we are at 45.2. We are not that bad actually. I would say we are right up there with the other competition. If you look at China, is only 53.4. All the others are in 50s, most of the companies. So we are not that bad. I think what we are lacking here is not the ability to innovate, to develop new products. What we are lacking here is the ability to translate those products or those actions, so those products and those solutions into actions and to make it scalable and sellable. I think this is what we are missing right now, and hopefully in the next days, when we are discussing more and more with the government, we'll liaise more and more with the government and with uh, pharma majors. Hopefully, we will be able to find out a middle path that allows the Indian industry to grow forward and to grow. Okay, I think this is all that I have for today. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I would take them now.
Thank you, Abhijit, for this wonderful presentation. Friends, first identify yourself and ask your question. We can take few questions. We have 10 minutes. First, give your name and then ask question. Because this is immensely going to help the Medipark that we Tech Forum proposes. Yeah, please. Mr. Agarwal, would you like to make any comment?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you, Abhijit, for a wonderful presentation. And I think you should be the Secretary Government of India for the medical device park. I mean, the way you are, yeah, it's wonderful the in terms of very very clear vision of medical device ecosystem. Now coming to the our action plan, I think one is the very good analysis of the whole ecosystem. Another is the action plan. I got few suggestions to make. First of all, I feel that financial muscles we can get only from the pharma major. So if we can make a presentation to one of those big pharma major, which you have pointed out, four of them, so it's Reddy, Cipla, Lupin, and Alchem, and then take a buyout from them for starting a new private MSME. I mean, we start with a small private MSME, convince the pharma company for that, and then we having set up that, next step should be the government Medipark. I mean, convince the government, because government will get convinced if we go with some kind of critical mass, or some not critical mass, I should say mini mass at least, and so my suggestion will be, first step, that if we can convince pharma major, hmm, I mean, this presentation which you have got is a fabulous presentation. I think if we can get them convinced, then I think for the get them convinced for setting up a mini private MSME park. So then we can tell them that one next step will be Government of India Medipark. So I think that is one option. Other option is that we make a presentation in MCCIA and say how we can have a tie-up with the electronics cluster, which they are working on. So these are my two suggestions. So how do we take it forward? I think Vilas can throw some more light.
So I had a discussion with the Poonawalla group,
Okay,
with someone in the Poonawalla group.
okay,
It was only a small chat
yeah, okay,
to see uh, what we can do together. So because it seems they have a lot of funds and they actually did invest in a few companies,
yeah,
but I think we have still not been able to reach the top levels where the decision would be made.
okay,
Uh, as I mentioned, we need to have also some critical mass in the group itself. We need at least 5, 6, 10 different kind of products and people who are interested.
yeah.
So the problem here is, even if we establish a new park,
Hmm.
uh, would the existing members or existing companies be willing to relocate? That is one question.
No,
So
you're right. I
yeah,
mean, they will not be prepared to relocate immediately, but they can start using the common facilities. I think it is not very far in Pune. If we set up a, mini park, the 7.5 acres of land was available as told by one of the investors who has come to make a presentation. I don't remember the name. And we start small and convince them that we start with the common facilities, and people can start going there, and they will be saving their cost, in terms of designing, in terms of testing, etc., etc. So, and that investment may not be very high to start with. For the any group will not like to start with 1,000 crore investment or things like that. Maybe some 10 to 15 crores investment, yeah, and with a long-term vision, we should be able to convince them.
there is one question from Gangal Madam. Is there any scope for mental health? Madam, I can tell you that we already have a company in India. It is called Vysa, WYSA. You can check it out. It is from Bangalore. It is owned by a friend of mine, Ramakant, and they are into this space. They are now a world leading company onto medical health. So you will find a lot of reports. They are associated with UK National Health Scheme (NHS) in UK already, and they are already doing a lot of stuff for mental health here in India. So you can check it out. It's called WYSA. I will write it out.
Any other question?
Yeah, any questions? Probably you can speak out instead of typing.
So maybe Vilas, you would like to sum up. How do we
Yeah,
go forward? How did you go forward?
yeah. Ani, I think it was a wonderful presentation and definitely gives a guideline. So publicity of this presentation itself will give us some inputs, but it has to be discussed jointly in a group and decide the further action plan. This is what I suggest,
Mhm.
because it's not one person's opinion that should uh, forwarded and taken up. So we will have a meeting as usual on this input given by Abhijit, and we'll proceed further accordingly, because he is meeting different people at different level in government as well as pharma. So based on that, we can discuss and decide. Definitely, as you suggested, we can make a presentation to Baroda Chamber of Commerce and Industries, which I can take up with the present secretary. I think Mr. Barathe is the president, the secretary of Electronics Committee, but I will take it up. No issues on that. And then we'll see how to proceed. Because if we go through or piggyback with Baroda Chamber of Commerce, as you rightly said,
Yes.
that is going to help.
Yes.
That is my comment.
Correct. Correct. I think we can try both the things. One pharma, another MCCIA.
Yeah, definitely. We can try both. Yeah.
Presentation to both, because in the MCCIA we'll get a lot of industrialists to
Yes.
listen to us, to our presentation.
We can already see Ahmednagar team they have already discussed and they have formed a group. So we will involve Mr. Todkar from Aurangabad in this group. I think Samre is present. Samre, are you there? If you can little bit share about what Aurangabad is doing. Sudhir Samre.
Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead, sir. You can switch on your video.
Yeah. Good morning. In Aurangabad, we are trying to have a medical medtech park, but whatever you're discussing, the question is of minimum mass. The same thing what you are discussing, the same thing we are also facing here, because there are hardly any industries in this sector at Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar. But we are taking some help from AMTZ, Vishakhapatnam, and after they are planning to visit Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar, and after discussing with them, then we'll be planning for next activities.
Samridji, are you also in touch with government of Maharashtra?
Yeah, some of our members are in touch.
What is their feeling on this topic?
And I'm not much aware of on that issue, but with our more discussion was with AMTZ, because in their in December they had some program at Vishakhapatnam, and we had visited also there to see their facilities and other discussion. But with the government of Maharashtra, we are not, and I'm not aware of what is the status.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we should involve Mr. Todkar, so he may be able to give. Who's the other person, Samre sir? Or Suresh Todkar is the only person?
Yeah, you can talk with him.
Yeah, Suresh. I think Abhijit, we will involve Suresh Todkar. Todkar, I already shared his number with you. If you have lost it, I will share
Yeah.
it
No,
again.
no, I have it. I have it.
Yeah, yeah. So, friends, thank you very much. We have already crossed our time. And thank you, Samreji, for this input.